I was 15 at the time of this story. I used to live in a major city in a small country. My parents worked the whole week, and as I also had my week busy due to school, we just had the weekend to go to our farm, which was just a few hours away by car. Our farm stood at the end of a dirt road, which itself was just off an exit from the main street, so it was not that desolate. It was about an acre big, so it was pretty spacious. There was the main house, a big chicken coop and run, some rabbit hutches, and a big crop field where my parents used to plant some corn, wheat, and some vegetables. I always had lots of fun there, probably because my 2 dogs stood there the whole week, and the weekend was the only time I could see them. Their names are Star and Liv. On a Saturday afternoon, I was near my dad as he pruned olive trees in the back, all the while playing fetch with Star. It was all going well until I accidentally threw the ball outside. The farm was fenced up with mesh, so I couldn't just go through it, nor did I want to lose the only ball we had. We were standing at the back of the farm. I decided to just go outside, though I still needed to go around because the ball was at the back, on the farm next to ours. The only way outside was through the main gate, which was on the opposite side of where I was. As I wasn't feeling like walking that much just to go outside, plus the going and coming back around, I decided to go by bike. The road around had lots of branches and fallen down trees, which made my journey for the ball way harder, forcing me to leave my bike behind and go by foot. Getting there, I got a call from my dad, in which he told me it was private property, advising me to be cautious. I didn't see any sign stating that, so I just kept going. I arrived at the spot. I searched for the ball, as did my dad through the fence, but we couldn't find it. After a while, I heard something bumping onto the ground. I looked behind me to where the sound came from, and I saw the ball. I got it and threw it to the other side of the fence. I asked my dad how the ball got there, since it was not there before, and he told me it had been thrown from a bush I was close to. I looked at that bush and saw a small white thing in it. At first, I thought it was a plastic bag, but when I remembered what my dad had told me, I got out of there, heading for my bike. About 50 feet from the fallen down tree, behind which my bike was, I heard noise coming from that same bush. Seconds later, a tall, skinny man started running toward me, screaming to give him his ball back. I started running, jumped the tree, and my bike was still there. I hopped on my bike and started pedaling, though I quickly noticed my tire was flat. I dropped the bike and went back to running until I finally reached my farm, where my dad was already waiting. We ran to the house, right where my mom was, and told her everything that happened. My mom started panicking, telling us that she was going to call the police, but my dad told her not to do that, as they would take a lot of time to arrive. After the things had de-escalated, we went to dinner and went to bed, as it was 11 p.m. already. I drifted off quite fast. However, I was woken up by my 2 dogs barking outside. There was a curtain blocking the view, but it was transparent, so anyone could look inside. I was sleeping with my back to the window, but as soon as I heard my dogs barking right outside my window, I slowly, and I mean really slowly, turned around, trying to make no noise. When I was finally able to look outside, I saw a figure darting away. I was scared of making any noise, so I just stood still on my bed, though I quickly fell asleep. I woke up in the morning, and the first thing I did was go outside to see if my bike was still there. It wasn't. There was no sign of my bike whatsoever. Other than that, there was a new sign on the other side, saying private property attached to some chains. I never went there again in my life, and that sign is still there until now. We've asked our other neighbors if they knew who the owner of that plot was, but no one knew, making this story even creepier. My name is Howard, and I own a small plot of land in Nebraska with my wife Charlotte and daughter Emily. We do not have many neighbors around, except for a couple whose house is just a few hundred feet from us. They are a very kind couple, and we talk with them on a daily basis. Emily was 8 years old, and she had just recently moved into her new room. She told us she was old enough and wanted to move into a new room alone. We agreed and gave her the room just in front of ours, just so we were close in case anything happened. A few weeks later, it was already night out when I heard footsteps in the hall, just outside our room. It was Emily. She came in crying, and she seemed terrified. I was the only one awake, so I asked her what happened, to which she asked if she could sleep with us. I agreed and told her to hop in the middle of us two. I told her to calm down, asking her once again what had happened, and she told me there was someone knocking on her window asking to be let in. With all the crying, my wife woke up. After being told what Emily had told me, she tried reassuring that everything was fine, though she herself was panicking inside. While she did so, I went downstairs to make a coffee so I could calm myself down. With the coffee already made, I went back upstairs, this time to Emily's room to see if there was someone hiding there. I did a thorough search but couldn't find anyone, though the window was slightly open. I knew it was not Emily. She was terrified of the whole situation. She wouldn't just open the window, and I remember locking it beforehand. I locked the window and left, also locking the door just in case there was someone inside whom I might have missed, or in case someone could enter through the window afterward. I went to my room, and both my wife and Emily were asleep. I woke up my wife discreetly to tell her what I had just seen, but she was too deep into sleep. You know when you wake up someone to ask them something, and they just answer with something completely unrelated to what you just asked? That's exactly how it went. After that, I just stared at nothingness for a while until I fell asleep. I was having a beautiful dream of my family and me on a vacation when I was awoken by knocking on the window. I got up immediately and went to check, but there was no one there. In fact, there couldn't be anyone there due to how high the room was. There was not even a balcony in which someone could be. There was nothing. I found the whole situation strange. Maybe I was still dreaming? I closed the curtains and went to the hall to check if Emily's door was still locked, and it was, so I just went back to sleep. The next morning, we all woke up at around the same time. We went downstairs, and during breakfast, I told them the whole situation. They both got pretty unsettled, but I assured them that whoever that was would not come back. We finished breakfast, and my wife left to sign some documents from work, which left me alone with Emily. It was Sunday, and since Emily did not have school that day, I brought her with me while I harvested the crops with the tractor. It was 1:45 when Emily pointed out something inside the crops. At first, I thought about it being the figure she had seen the previous night, but that thought quickly faded as I noticed it was just the scarecrow standing in the distance. I finished the line, took a turn, and then I remembered that we did not have a scarecrow. I took a look at the spot, and to my surprise, it was not there. Emily pointed once again at something, this time to someone running across the field toward our house. The figure, which I assumed to be a man, kept running toward the house. Reaching the window, he peeked inside, this time downstairs. I left the tractor running to not draw attention and approached the guy, yelling for him to get out, or I would shoot him. He didn't acknowledge me, so I shot my gun close to his feet, purposely missing, of course. I always kept a gun with me whenever I went, in case something like this happened. The man started running after realizing I was not one to play with. My wife soon came back and we called the police, even though there were no fingerprints we could see or any evidence against him. We didn't even know who he was. After 2 weeks of investigation, the police archived the case. A few years back, I was a 37-year-old broke woman. I had a son, James, from a father I didn't even know. I used to frequent a lot of parties, as you may have noticed from this start. I was lost. I didn't know what to do with my life. I couldn't get my life together, even after trying dozens of times. As a last resort, I decided to try my final option, getting a sugar daddy. I know I wasn't the youngest woman out there, nor the most beautiful, but you know the saying, every pot has its lid. After a few messages on Facebook, I found a rich old man whom I ended up marrying. Fast forward a few months, the man ended up dying, leaving me with the entirety of his inheritance, since he didn't have any family except for me. One of the inheritances I received was a 3-acre farm, which I transformed into our main residence. The old house we had wasn't conducive to James's well-being and growth, so this new space was perfect. It was a Saturday, if I remember correctly, and I had gone to a club, leaving my son home alone. He actually enjoyed being home alone, otherwise I wouldn't have left him there by himself, of course. It was 3 a.m. when I got a call from him, in which he stated that there was smoke coming from the middle of the crops. I left the club and rushed home. My son was perplexed, still looking outside the window at the smoke when I arrived. I asked him if the smoke got any different from when it started, and to my surprise, he denied. As the only adult there, I went outside to take a look at it. I asked my son if he wanted to come with me, but he said he would rather stay inside, so I headed to the field. There was wheat planted there, so I had to get really close to know if it was actually a fire. Getting close to it, I could hear murmuring at around the same place the smoke was coming from. I just kept going, and when I got close enough, I could see it was not a simple fire, but rather a ritual happening right in front of my eyes. A bunch of hooded people circling a bonfire. In the middle of them, right beside the bonfire, was a cow head. It seemed to be freshly cut, though we didn't have cows or any type of animal for that matter. I was frozen in fear, watching the hooded figures chant something in a language I didn't understand. I wanted to run away, but I was too afraid to make any noise. I hoped they wouldn't notice me, but it was too late. One of them turned around and saw me. He pointed at me and shouted something. The others stopped chanting and looked at me too. They all had masks on, so I couldn't see their faces, but I could feel their hostility. They started to move toward me, slowly at first, then faster. I panicked and turned around, running back to the house. I heard them behind me, getting closer. I reached the door and slammed it shut, locking it. After locking it, I went directly to where James was and called 911. They said they would be there as soon as possible, but as it was so desolate, it could take up to 15 minutes. The operator told me to hide, so I took James and went to the basement. We locked the door and waited, praying they wouldn't break in. We heard banging against the main door, followed by a pause. 30 minutes later, it resumed and broke the main door. We were terrified. After that, there were thuds against the basement door as well. Huddled together, the next thing we knew, the basement door also got broken down. They had broken in. I asked them to please not kill us, until I heard a voice saying that it was the police, asking if we were okay. I breathed a sigh of relief and hugged one of the 2 police officers that got in. I told them what I told the 911 operator, and they did a search through the entire farm, but didn't find anyone hiding. In the crops, where I had seen the ritual, there was just the ashes of the fire. To this day, I still don't know what happened or why they had chosen my farm as a place for their ritual. I still think about this situation to this day, 20 years later, and it keeps giving me goosebumps. After that incident, I never left my son home alone, whether he liked it or not, nor went partying ever again.